Hey everyone, the world as we know it is gone. 99% of humanity has turned into zombies, and the last survivors have taken refuge on a remote island. But what happens when the infected learn to cross the water? This is a gripping story of survival, sacrifice, and science where a single girl might hold the key to saving what's left of mankind. Stay with us till the end. And if you enjoy these kinds of thrilling stories, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and support the channel. Now let's begin. The Archangel Chain of Islands. Isla Vita, New Eden. Hope was the last bastion of humanity's survival. But behind these strong walls, disaster was brewing. On the surface, it was a picture of controlled chaos. Helicopters flew in supplies, military vehicles rumbled around the perimeter, and inside the quarantine zones, medical staff worked tirelessly. But below this veneer of order, the situation was rapidly deteriorating. Claire was running out of time. The virus was evolving faster than they could develop a vaccine, and without a miracle, everyone inside the quarantine zone would soon be dead. Suddenly, the unmistakable wail of sirens pierced the air. Claire rushed to the command center where Torres was glued to a screen. "There's been an incursion at the eastern wall," he said grimly. "Multiple breaches. The east wall is compromised," Claire exclaimed. "I told you this wouldn't work. We can't keep people locked up like animals." "I know," Torres said, rubbing his weary eyes. "But we had no other choice. With the virus spreading faster than wildfire, how could they let more infected people in?" Each new arrival risked bringing the virus closer to their doorstep. There was no way to tell who was carrying the disease, who would bring about their doom. From the corner of her eye, Claire saw a news report from Jakarta, Indonesia. The Indonesian military was overwhelmed. Jakarta had fallen. The virus was spreading across Southeast Asia. Claire felt a chill. The military presence at the island was being reduced to maintain order in the quarantine zone. Who would protect them when they needed it most? The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. They weren't safe here. None of them were. As the days passed, the situation grew increasingly dire. More breaches at the fence. More people infected. Their supplies were dwindling and panic was spreading. People crowded the streets. Fear etched on their faces. Claire spent her days in the lab, desperately trying to find a cure. Her nights were filled with nightmares of blood and fire. She dreamed of the day the virus took her father. She woke up screaming, her heart pounding. She was so close to finding a cure. She could feel it. But with each passing hour, the urgency to save humanity pressed down on her like a lead weight. In the midst of the chaos, she found solace in the faces of children. Their laughter echoed through the quarantine zone, a reminder of what they were fighting for. For them, Claire refused to give up. She immersed herself in research, analyzing blood samples, searching for a breakthrough. The clock was ticking. She could feel it. But just when hope seemed lost, a glimmer of light appeared. Claire discovered that the virus had one significant weakness. It was repelled by a specific wavelength of light. She had stumbled upon the key to stopping the virus, but she needed to test it. Meanwhile, the situation in the quarantine zone was spiraling out of control. More and more people were turning. The island was on the verge of collapse. Claire knew she had to act fast. She developed a plan to use specialized lamps to emit the virus-repelling light, bathing the island in a protective glow. It was risky, but it was their only hope. As darkness fell over the island, Claire and her team activated the lamps. The air shimmered with an otherworldly glow. People looked up, confused and scared. Then they started to feel the change within them slow down. The virus was being repelled. Claire felt tears welling up in her eyes. It was working. Just then, a loud crash echoed across the island. The eastern wall had been breached. Infected creatures were pouring through the gap. The people in the quarantine zone panicked. Some ran for cover. Others stood frozen with fear. Torres rushed to Claire. "It's too late," he said, his voice filled with defeat. "They're here." Claire looked out at the approaching figures. Their skin was a horrifying shade of red. Their eyes burned with a terrifying light. But then something unexpected happened. The creatures stopped. Their heads tilted as if listening to something. Then they turned and fled into the night. The virus-repelling light was working. It drove the infected away. Claire watched in disbelief as the creatures stumbled back into the darkness, driven away by the very light that gave them life. But this victory was short-lived. She knew the virus would adapt. The battle for humanity's survival had just begun. The war against the Red Death was far from over, and Claire knew that she and her fellow survivors would have to keep fighting tooth and nail for every inch of ground they had left. But as the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, Claire stood tall, with a newfound determination in her eyes. She was ready to face whatever horrors the new day might bring. Humanity had endured countless plagues and wars throughout history, This, she knew, was no different. They would survive. The first thing that hit Claire when she woke up was a searing pain in her arm. But it wasn't a bite or a cut. Her entire upper arm was covered in a painful rash. What the hell? She tried to sit up, but dizziness forced her back down. Easy, Tiger. You're safe here. Claire turned to see Dr. Hayes kneeling beside her. What happened? You passed out after we got back from the island. Your vitals spiked, but your arm is the weird part. What did you do? Get bit by a monkey? Claire frowned. She didn't remember anything beyond burning jungle and a flash of red eyes. How long? 2 days. You slept the whole time. This rash isn't anything I've seen before. Claire looked down. The rash was spreading, almost pulsing in sync with her heartbeat. I think I know what it is. If I'm right, you might have less than 24 hours. Claire groaned. Of course she should have known. Nothing good ever happened on this godforsaken island. Meanwhile, in the prison wing, Alice sat strapped to a table. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and beneath it, Claire saw the beginnings of the same rash. She'd used every trick in the book to keep the girl awake, but Alice kept falling into a drugged slumber. Every time Claire approached, Alice recoiled as if in pain. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I don't want you to die," Claire said gently. "I think it's too late for that." Alice suddenly snarled, thrashing against her bonds. "They're dying. I can feel it." Claire flinched. "What are you feeling?" "Their thoughts. Their feelings. They're afraid." "It's so loud." Claire felt a pang of sympathy. Maybe she could still save the girl. "Then help me save them. Let me give you the vaccine." Alice shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No. I am the monster. I make them stronger." She looked at Claire, eyes filled with sadness. "But I don't want to be the monster anymore." Claire felt a rush of determination. If she couldn't reach the girl, she'd reach the virus itself. Back in the lab, Claire worked feverishly, trying to isolate the virus from Alice's blood. Time was running out. In a matter of hours, the rash on her arm would start killing her. But there was something else. Watching Claire work from the shadows was a member of the tech team. He watched as Claire isolated a sample and injected herself. Then he pressed a button on his earpiece. "She's prepping for containment breach." "Repeat. Doctor is prepping for containment breach." Suddenly the lights flickered and died. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Attention personnel. This is your captain. Lockdown initiated. All personnel report to your designated safe zones immediately." But Claire didn't move. She felt the first wave of nausea hit her. It was getting harder to breathe. She needed to get to Alice, warn her about the impending power outage. Just then, a figure emerged from the darkness. "Where's the bathroom?" Claire croaked, pointing to a nearby restroom. "Hurry, we don't have much time." The man nodded and dashed away. Claire stumbled after him, the world tilting crazily. The last thing she remembered was a cold tile floor and a hand reaching for hers. A hand with flesh rotting around bone. Then everything went black. When Claire woke up again, the prison lights were back on. But that was the least of her problems. The rash on her arm was now a gaping wound, filled with what looked like hundreds of tiny teeth. "Oh God, it's working. The virus is replicating inside of me." She clawed at her arm, trying to rip it off, but it wouldn't come. She turned to the man who'd brought her water. "What did I do?" He stared back at her in horror. "You're not supposed to be alive. The virus should have killed you." Claire struggled to speak. "I think I need to get to Alice, tell Dr. Hayes. I'm sorry. I never should have." She collapsed before she could finish. The last thing she heard was the man screaming. "It's spreading. It's spreading. It's spreading." In the prison wing, Alice stirred. The lights flickered and died. She felt panic rise within her. The fear of her sisters and brothers as they sensed the approaching darkness. And then she heard a familiar voice. "Don't be afraid, I'm here to help." Was it really Claire? Or was it just another trick of the virus? The door slid shut behind Claire, sealing her inside the reinforced chamber with Alice. She risked another glance at the monitor. Alice lay sedated. Her eyes flickered open, then closed again. The pulse monitors beeped steadily, but the readings were far from normal. Her neural activity spiked erratically, like a network trying to re-establish lost connections. Claire stared at her through the glass. "She's the key. she whispered. "We just have to survive long enough to use her." Torres wasn't so sure. "You're gambling with the lives of everyone on this island." Claire didn't argue. She returned to her lab and got to work, trying to piece together what was happening to Alice and how they could stop it. For 2 days, she analyzed blood samples, interviewed the medics, reviewed scans. Then it hit her. The virus was responding to something in Alice, triggering a dormant part of its genetic code. But why? 2 days turned to 3. Claire was exhausted, but the answer kept eluding her. Finally, she stepped out of the lab and caught sight of Alice being wheeled past by the medics. The answer slammed into her. Of course, the virus had been dormant for years, lying in wait until it sensed a trigger, a biological match that reactivated its code, and that, she realized, made Alice even more valuable. She was the key to understanding the virus, maybe even a cure. But Claire had to tread carefully. Alice was a ticking time bomb, and she was starting to show signs of agitation. That night, a storm rolled in. Rain hammered the island, and with it came something worse. The infected had not retreated as planned. They had been planning. From the sea, makeshift rafts began to appear, some carrying as many as 20 creatures. They had learned to cross water. Isla Vida was no longer safe. The first wave hit the southern gate. Guards were overwhelmed in minutes. Screams echoed through the base. Claire ran to the lab, clutching the only vial of the prototype serum. Alice stirred in her chamber, sensing the chaos outside. Then the power died. The chamber locks disengaged. Alice stepped out. Claire raised the tranquilizer gun, but didn't fire. "You can help us, Alice. I know you can." Alice looked around, blinking rapidly. "They're coming. They want me back. They control you through the hive," Claire said softly. "But I can break it. Let me." Alice hesitated, then nodded. Claire injected the serum into her arm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Alice screamed a piercing sound that echoed through the entire facility. She collapsed to the floor, convulsing. Outside, the infected froze mid. Some dropped to the ground. Others stumbled back as if disoriented. The hive connection had shattered, but not for long. Torres and the remaining soldiers secured the lab. "We have to evacuate. The island is lost." Claire refused. "If the serum worked on Alice, it might work on others. We have to try." Torres stared at the dozens of infected still approaching on the security feed. "There's no time." Suddenly, Alice stood up slowly, breathing hard. Her eyes no longer glowed. "They're confused. I can feel it. But they're angry." Claire handed Alice the remaining vials. "Then you'll have to deliver this to them." The plan was insane. Claire, Alice, and a small strike team headed into the heart of the overrun island, toward the main power station, now crawling with the infected. If they could disperse the serum through the ventilation systems, it might break the network entirely. The battle was brutal. Half the team didn't make it, but Alice reached the control room. As the infected swarmed in, she released the aerosol canisters of the modified serum into the air. The creatures screamed and dropped. Dozens collapsed on the spot. Others simply stared, blinking, confused and lost, as if waking from a nightmare. The network was dead. The hive mind shattered. Days later, Isla Vida began cleanup operations. The remaining infected, now disconnected from the hive, were dissolute weak. Many showed signs of remembering their human lives. Claire sat beside Alice, who was still recovering. "You saved us," she said. Alice looked at her with clear, human eyes. "They're still out there. Other hives. Other queens." This was just one. Claire nodded slowly. "Then we'll find them. And this time humanity would be ready."
Hi guys, please subscribe my channel.